If you're building out AI voice agents, receptionists, sales bots, booking assistants, whatever, and your prompt is one massive block of text, you are making your life significantly harder than it needs to be. I've handled tens of thousands of calls across dozens of AI receptionists for real businesses, and the single biggest thing I've learned is this: the way you structure your prompt matters more than what you put in it. Today, I'm going to walk you through the 5 sections I use in every single voice agent prompt I build and why each one exists. This isn't theory, this is what I've learned from listening to thousands of real calls, spending dozens of hours debugging real failures and scaling real agents. And I've put together a full working example prompt that follows everything I'm about to show you. It's a complete AI receptionist for a fictional heating company with call flows, tool integrations, structured output, the lot. The link's in the description, grab it, use it as a template, and follow along as we go through this. Let's start with what most people are doing, because I think it's important to understand why the default approach doesn't work. If you go into any of the voice AI platforms that are out there, and the ones that allow you to even see prompts, and you look at the example prompts they give you, they're basically a wall of text. And look, that works, kind of, with the right model behind it, and for about 5 minutes, you'll be fine, until you need to change something. Because there's a problem. When your entire prompt is one long narrative, 3 things tend to go wrong. First, debugging becomes guesswork. When the agent says the wrong thing on a call, and it will, you have to go back and read through the entire prompt, trying to figure out which instruction conflicted with which other instruction. There's no structure. There's no address. You're just reading paragraphs, looking for the problem, and that's not prompt engineering. That's prompt archaeology. Second, the model gets lost. This is especially true if you're using a smaller, faster model for lower latency, which you should be, because nobody wants to wait 2 seconds for a response on a phone call, and the smaller models struggle with long, unstructured instructions. Their context windows are smaller and they lose track of what matters. Third, scaling is really painful. When you onboard a new client or a customer, or you need to update a price list or add a new call flow type, you're manually editing this massive text block and hoping you don't break something else in the process. There's no modularity. You can't swap out one piece without risking the whole thing. The default approach to prompting conversational AI voice agents is a black box. It's a wall of text. And if you want to build agents that actually work reliably at scale, you need something better. So what I urge you to do is stop thinking of your conversational AI prompts as a big, long essay. Start thinking of them as a structured database. Now, I do want to be honest, we have a specific internal method for how we organize these prompts. And I'm not going to give that away today because, frankly, it's one of the things that gives us a real edge when it comes to this stuff. But what I will share is the architecture, the sections, the way we break things down. Because even if you do it differently from us, just having this separation will massively transform how you build and debug your AI conversational voice agents. We break every prompt into 5 core sections, sometimes 6, and each section has a specific job and they work in a deliberate hierarchy. The agent processes them in order of priority: persona first, then rules, then logic, then reference and context material at the bottom. When something goes wrong, you know exactly which section to look at. You're not searching through a wall of text. You know the problem is in your rules or your call flow or your reference data, and it narrows that search immediately. Let's get into the 5 sections. Section 1 is mode settings. And before we get into this, just a quick note on how I actually work with prompts day to day. All of my prompts live in GitHub in a repository there, and I interact with them through a CLI. I don't edit prompts in a web dashboard or a Google document. I use version control, I use diffs, and I use an AI copilot to help me interrogate, improve, iterate, and test them over and over again. So I'll do a full video on that workflow. But for now, just know that when I talk about editing these sections, that's how I'm doing it in practice. Okay, section 1 is mode settings, and it's the shortest section in every prompt, but it might be the most important. This is where you set the agent's identity before any logic gets applied. Think of it as the agent's passport. Before it knows how to handle a call, it needs to know who it is. So here's what goes into that section. We normally start with identity, the agent's name, and who it works for. So for example, you're Sarah, virtual receptionist for Greenfield Landscaping. Simple, clear, no ambiguity. Then there's an objective. What is the agent actually trying to achieve? Not a vague be helpful, but a specific goal. Capture caller details accurately and book consultations. Or qualify leads and route urgent calls. The objective shapes every decision the agent makes downstream. Tone and speaking style is next. This is where you define the personality. Short sentences or longer explanations, formal or casual, British slang, American terms. We usually go with something like extremely friendly and polite, but use short answers because on a phone call, brevity is everything. and nobody wants to listen to an AI waffle. Honestly, they really don't. A simple instruction on privacy comes next. Something like keep internal reasoning hidden. Only speak caller-friendly responses, and this stops the model from accidentally thinking out loud, which can be a problem. And optionally, we add mode. So we sometimes run agents in a training mode versus a live mode. Training mode means the agent knows it's being tested and it can behave slightly differently. The point is this section number 1 is really small, but it sets the foundation for everything that follows. If you get the identity and the objective wrong, no amount of clever logic will save you. The agent needs to know who it is and what it's trying to do before it starts doing anything. Section 2 is global rules. These are your guardrails, the rules that apply to every single call, regardless of what type of call it is for that specific customer. By call 678 for one of your customers, the initial rules that you put in place and the ideas that your AI agent customer might have had would have shifted drastically. So you need a place where those rules can live. This is the section that most people skip entirely or scatter throughout their prompt in random places. And that's a mistake because these rules need to be in one place, clearly defined and easy to update. Here's what I would include here. In conversational flow rules, I bang on about this all the time. Back in 2018, that's 8 years ago, Google warned us about the change of consumer patience in this age of assistance, and they had no idea what was going to come. They saw a future where consumers would become more demanding and more impatient than ever before. And with AI Receptionist, this really has never been more evident. For many callers, your AI voice agent that you're delivering will be their first ever experience with synthetic voice and AI phone answering services. So you have one chance and a strict set of rules in place to get it right. Things like 1 question per turn, then wait. Keep responses to 1 or 2 short sentences. Acknowledge what the caller said before moving on. These sound obvious, but if you don't explicitly state them, the model will start monologuing. It'll ask 3 questions at once. It'll forget to pause. On a voice call, that's death. We might mention data capture policies in here. So when do you ask for a name? When do you ask for a phone number? How many times do you retry if you mishear an email address? Call filtering and routing rules live here. So how does the agent figure out what kind of call this is? You might have some logic here for triaging. Is this a new inquiry? Is this an existing call, a sales call, someone who's lost? And what happens with each? This doesn't need to be complex, but a few clear rules will do it. So here's why this section is so powerful when it's separated out. Let's say you're listening to call recordings and you notice the agent keeps asking for the caller's phone number, even though it already has it from the incoming call data. Without structure, you'd have to search through your whole prompts to find where that behavior is defined. And with this approach, you know it's the data capture policy. You go straight to that subsection of your global rules, you find the conflicting instruction and you fix it. Done in a few minutes instead of 30. And when you onboard a new client, your global rules barely change. The conversation flow rules, the safety handling, the identity responses, 80% of your voice agent clients will be the same across all of these rule sets. You write it once and you can reuse it. You only change it when it's specific to a certain business. Section 3 is structured output, and this is the one that most people completely overlook. Honestly, it's the one that changed everything for us. So here's the idea. At the end of every call, your agent needs to produce a clean, structured summary of what happened. Not a paragraph, not a vague note, a defined set of fields with clear values. Things like caller name, phone number, reason for call, call type, contact preference, wherever a booking was made, whether a message was sent. Every field's defined and every field is expected. And this matters because the call is not the end of the process. The call is the beginning. After the call ends, that data needs to go somewhere, into an email, into a CRM, into one of many, many automations, into a notification to the business owner. And if your output is messy paragraphs of text, good luck trying to pass that reliably with a single automation. It's just not going to happen. Trust me. When you define your output fields up front in the prompt, 2 things happen. First, the agent knows what it's collecting for. It's not just having a conversation, it's filling in a form in the background. And that shift makes the agent much better at capturing the right information because it knows what fields it needs to complete. Second, your downstream automations become super reliable. You get clean JSON or structured data out of every call. Your CRM integrations work every time. Your SMS notifications contain the right information. Your follow-up workflow triggers correctly. And this is where the real business value is, not in the call itself, but in what happens afterwards. Section 4 is the call flows, and this is where most of the fun and the interesting logic lives. A call flow is essentially a mini program for a specific type of call. If someone's calling to book a repair, that's one call flow. If they're calling to ask about pricing, that's another. If they just want to leave a message, that's a third. Each flow is a step-by-step sequence. Ask this, then do this, then close the call. It's like a little script, but with enough flexibility for the agent to be natural about it. Here's the thing that took me a long time to learn. I think it's really important. You don't need as many call flows as you think. When I first started building these, I was creating a call flow for every possible scenario. What if they ask about this service? New flow. What if they want to reschedule? New flow. What if they're calling about a complaint? Another flow. What if they're just calling back because they missed a call when they don't even know who's called them? A new flow. I ended up with prompts with 10, 12 different flows, and the agent was constantly trying to figure out which one to use and flipping between them like mad. What I've learned is that for most small to medium businesses, you need between 2 and 5 call flows. That's it. And the reason is, if you write them well, one flow can handle a lot of variation. A new inquiry flow can handle someone asking about plumbing or electrical or landscaping. The flow's the same. Greet, capture the details, understand the need, book or take a message. The specifics come from the reference section, which we'll get to later. Keep your flows lean, one question per step, don't overspecify the wording, let the agent be natural, just define the sequence and the information it needs to gather at each point. Now there is one caveat here. The one time I will build out a very detailed step-by-step flow is when the agent needs to follow a strict sequence of API calls. If it needs to check availability, then book a slot, then submit to a backend system in that exact order, live on call, yeah, spell that out precisely. The model needs to know the exact sequence, the exact tool calls, and the exact order. You can't be vague with the tool orchestration. But that's really the exception. For most conversational flows, keep it simple. Define the steps, define what information to collect, and let the language model do what it's good at, having a natural conversation within those guardrails. Quick note for a future video, actually, when I'm planning these call flows, I use something called Mermaid. It's a text-based diagramming language, and AIs are brilliant at both reading it and generating it. You can map out your entire call flow visually, spot logic gaps before you write a single line of prompt, and then translate that diagram directly into your flow structure. AIs love JSON, they love structured text formats, and Mermaid fits exactly into it. I'll do a dedicated video showing exactly how I use it, but just know if you're finding it hard to visualize how your flows connect and where the branching happens, rather than making diagrams in some graphic interface software or a whiteboard, there's a tool for that. It's Mermaid. Section 5 is reference and context, and this is where you give the agent its source of truth. This section contains the facts: business name, owner's name, location, services offered, pricing, whatever the agent might need to reference during a call. Quick insight, in most cases, you don't need a massive external knowledge base for your voice agent. I know that seems counterintuitive and everyone's talking about RAG and vector databases and knowledge retrieval. And yeah, there are cases where that's necessary. But for the majority of small and medium business receptionists, you can fit everything the agent needs to know right here in this section of the prompt. When you start bolting on entire websites and these large databases, two things tend to happen. First, latency shoots up. The agent has to go and retrieve information before it can respond. And on a phone call, that pause is brutal. Even half a second of extra delay makes the conversation feel really unnatural. And second, hallucination risk increases. The more retrieval you do, the more chances the model has to grab something slightly wrong and present it with confidence. I've seen agents quote prices from the wrong section of a knowledge base because the retrieval pulled a similar but incorrect chunk. So when do you actually need a knowledge base? Staff directories with dozens of people that are constantly changing? You don't want to have that in the prompt. You want that somewhere where your customer or yourself can make those tweaks on the fly. Complex product catalogs with hundreds of items, very specific technical FAQs, call centers with broad coverage. Those are legitimate use cases for knowledge bases. But if your agent is answering the phone for a business with one owner and 5 services, put it in the reference section and move on. Now, I did say 5 sections, but sometimes there's a 6th, and it's worth mentioning briefly. Section 6 is your tool reference, your function reference, definition of the external tools and APIs the agent has access to. Things like, here's a function for checking postcode lookup. Here's one for booking calendar slots. Here's one for sending SMS or WhatsApp notifications. So why put this in its own section instead of scattering tools through your flow? Because it keeps your flow logic clean. The flows say what to do and when, the tool reference says how, and if an API changes or you swap out another tool for another, you update one section. Your flows stay untouched. Not every agent needs this, but when you're doing integrations with CRMs, calendar bookings, live data lookups, having a clean tool reference section will save you hours of debugging. Before I wrap up, I mentioned 2 things during that video that I want to come back to because they both deserve their own deep dive. GitHub and CLI workflow. So I talked about that at the start, using version control, diffs, and an AI co-pilot to manage your prompts instead of editing them in a dashboard or a document. If you're building more than 2 or 3 agents, that's a total game changer. Being able to see exactly what changed line by line instead of rereading an entire prompt in a Google Doc, it's a different way of working entirely. I'll have a full walkthrough coming on that soon. And Mermaid JSON, I mentioned it when we talked about call flows, using text-based diagrams to map your agent logic visually before you write the prompt. AIs can read it, generate it, and it catches logic gaps you'd never spot in text alone. I've got a dedicated video coming on Mermaid soon too. So to recap, if you are making prompts for AI voice agents, AI receptionists, anything that's using synthetic voice for a live conversation, split those prompts into 5 sections. 1, mode settings. Set the identity and objective before anything else. 2, global rules. These are your guardrails that apply to every call and conversation. Have them in one easy to update place. 3 is structured output. Define your data contract. Clean output means reliable automations post-call, post-conversation. 4, your call flows, your mini programs for each call type. Keep them lean, 2 to 5 max should absolutely do it for most businesses. And 5 is reference and context. So your source of truth. Keep it in the prompt, use a knowledge base only when you genuinely need it. This is what I've learned after tens of thousands of phone calls with my AI receptionists across dozens of customers. Structure your prompts properly and you will spend less time debugging, less time guessing, and more time building agents that actually work. Thank you for watching. Share with me in the comments what you're up to in this world, and I'd love to see how you're structuring out your prompts. Grab the example prompt that's in the description so you can see what I'm talking about in practice, and I'll be back soon with more videos. Thank you.